Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Some of you might remember this car as the Thermocure car, and it's actually back in for some service work. So an update on the Thermocure real quick. Car's been driven about 600-700 miles roughly, and no problems whatsoever with the cooling system, which is great to see. So everything's working as it should. Car's running great, and the customer's brought it back because he wants me to replace the clutch, and we're going to do some suspension work on this car because it's kind of rough and just needs to be refreshed. So that's what we're going to do today. But just thought I'd give you guys just a quick update on the Thermocure because sometimes you never get the final results. You always get the initial results, and here I have an example of results that have withstood the test of time, as they say. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and drag all the parts out, and I'll show you guys what I'm going to do. But it's basically full cones all around, full shocks all around, lower arms, control arms, and I believe some rear adjusters for the back so I can set all the alignment up properly, and new ball joints. Yeah, we're going to do new ball joints on this car. So bit of a fun project, but it'll be really nice when it's done. Whenever I do alignment work, I always like to start out by knowing where the car is. So it doesn't take a lot of equipment to measure. You need a camber gauge, some string, tape measure, another ruler, and then just something to write with. Now, I started out by measuring the rear and front toe. So the rear toe and the front toe on this car, actually all the specs on this car are basically in alignment right now. Although I need to replace the parts, so that may shift. But currently right now, we've got 3/16 toe in at the back. We got a 16th toe out at the front. Rear camber is about 1.5 degrees positive. Front camber is between 1/4 and 1/2 degree positive. So it's all still fairly standard, and it's equal on both sides, or at least close enough. So that tells me that this car is just kind of gently worn out, hasn't suffered any tremendous damage. And I did run a string around the perimeter to check the alignment of the rear subframe. And the rear wheels are both pointed the same amount off of the body, so it means that tells me that the rear trailing arms and stuff are not bent on this car, so that's a good thing. So now that I've taken my initial measurements, what I'll do is I'll start replacing the suspension parts, and then get the ride height set up, and then I'll have to go recheck all the dimensions. In addition, I'll be checking the caster as well, since we're going to put new adjustable lower control arms and tie rods on this car. I'll have to readjust all that stuff. But I always like to start out with just an initial assessment. That way I understand, is this car out of spec, or is it still, a decent car to work with? So that's what I've done. Like I said, pretty simple equipment. So let's get started with the suspension rebuild then. So here's a shot of the condition of the rear cones. As you can see, that's a substantially flatter cone on the right. Obviously the original one's on the right, the new one's on the left. I'm going to be fitting these with adjustable bits so we can set the ride height and whatnot. But just thought I'd show you the original cone condition on this car. So as you can see, I'm already dug into the front suspension here. And as I mentioned before, checking steering racks, like if you pull this arm and place it wherever and it drops down to nothing, then that's a sign of a bad rack. But this one, still good. So at least on this side. Still need to get the shock off, still need to get the upper suspension components apart, but I just want to mention that on this car we are not going to go through the trouble of reshimming these very loose ball joints. What we're going to be doing is fitting the nice kit. These are the no shim sealed Japanese quality kits. I think they're Japanese. I really like this because you can just take the joint off and fit the new one and don't worry about any shimming work. So very exciting. In fact, it says right there, no shims required. I also like the fact that the boots are totally 100% sealed, keeping the dirt and grit out, whereas this design is not. So you still have to grease them once you fit it together. You do have to apply some grease, but after that you don't have to do anything anymore. So very excited to use them on this car. Anyway, thought you guys might like to see where I'm at. So onto the front, and I've got the front cone out already. As you can see, That is massively squished. So I'll be sneaking those in here real soon into the housings. This has been a fun one. Relatively straightforward. I don't think anyone's rebuilt the suspension before, so this might actually be the first rebuild on this car. But so far so good. All the usual problems getting stuff apart because of rust and things, but yeah, I was pleasantly surprised to see the really, really squished cones on these things. But I'll get it all together and show you a finished shot. So, right hand side, I've done the same work. I've replaced the lower arms, tie rods. You can see here I've got the ball joints, etc. So, the only thing I haven't done yet is replace the cone. And the reason for that is you've got to take the lower arm out in order to get the cone out. And it's always annoying because the clutch bell housing is in the way. However, I strategically planned to do this job because I have to do a clutch on this car. So, let me swing you around. And as you can see, I've already fought the battle, removed the clutch cover, and now I have totally access to the upper control arm bolts. So I'm going to go ahead and finish doing that suspension project and then go ahead and take out the flywheel here. So yeah, if you ever have to do a clutch, that would be a good time to do suspension work just because of the accessibility to that lower bolt. It's not impossible to do with the clutch bell housing in the way, but it sure is a lot easier to do it when it's out of the way. Here's something you don't get to see me doing very often, and that's alignment work. And this car got front and rear full adjustable components along with new cones and shocks and brakes. So what I'm doing here is just saying the camber and caster, since they are fully adjustable, I need to reset them as well as toe. But just thought I'd show you guys my setup here. Works pretty well. So with all that alignment work having been completed, here's all the parts I had to replace on this car. You'll notice there's a bunch of brake parts over here, and that's because I noticed that most of the brake parts were either worn out or at their limit. The rear brakes were pretty much at the limit of the adjusters. The front rotors have a very heavy groove, and the pads are basically worn out. Yeah, there's still some material left, but this guy lives about 4 hours away, and I wasn't going to have him drive back anytime soon to fix this problem. So, did a fresh set of brakes, shoes, pads, fresh springs for the rear, and clean lubricated all the adjusters in the back, so the back is all completely finished. I mentioned that I had to do a clutch on this car, and you can see by the pressure plate that this thing was chattering and getting hot. So new pressure plate and disc. Obviously this disc was worn down to the rivets, you can see there, and yeah, just evidence of heat and scarring was happening. So definitely worn out clutch. In addition to the clutch, I did the hydraulics, and I replaced all the rest of the mechanical components. So the arm, the cylinder, everything in this thing was just totally worn out. Got that taken care of. It drives really nicely now. One of the small projects I had to do was replace a fuel sender. Fuel was leaking into the float. You can see it sloshing around in there a little bit and causing an inaccurate reading, so the owner asked me to replace that, so I did. And the project I started with was a suspension rebuild. Most of the bushes were just shot from, time, use, age, etc. The cones, as I mentioned previously, they were nice and flat. So with a fresh set of cones and all the suspension adjustable parts you could throw out this car, I was able to dial in the thing straight into the middle of the factory specifications. It's equal on both sides. The ride height is exactly where it needs to be. So this car tracks really nicely and it drives really well. In addition to all these parts, obviously I had to fit adjustable trumpets. Now, the reason I didn't reuse these is because there's no guarantee that these are going to come apart when I go to take them off the car. And in this case, this aluminum trumpet is fused to these threads. Yeah, I could probably spend about an hour heating this up and working it off and getting it free, but that's time you're having to pay me to repair your car when it's just easier to fit the whole new kit. So a new kit was fitted, lubricated with anti-seize, and a fresh set of shocks as well. So having said that, it's been a fun project. This has been about 4 or 5 weeks worth of work overall, just on and off between other projects, and about a week having to wait for the machinist to finish cutting the flywheel. So I'll be glad to get this one out and get the next project in. So hopefully you guys appreciated this video and just got to see a fairly large project I had to deal with. And yeah, you never know what you're going to run into when you start one of these projects. So it was definitely interesting to deal with the little problems this car had. Now, one thing I didn't show, I had to do some work on the sunroof. The sunroof was very, very slow to operate, and it's because all the grease in the sunroof had basically turned into like a sticky paste. So cleaned all that out and lubricated it, and it's operating much more smoothly now. So thankfully it wasn't a problem with the motor, just old grease. Either way, this is what I had to do. So if you guys managed to make it this far to the video, I appreciate it. And let me know if you've had to do projects like this before in your cars. It seems like I have to commonly do suspension rebuilds and brake rebuilds, and more often than not, I'm having to do clutch rebuilds as well. So it seems like everything in these cars are just totally worn out these days. And my projects are now taking longer and longer to complete. So with that having been said, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys soon.